All right, I'm here with Jay McBain of Forrester. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to bring Jay in because actually he was the one who really got me started to think about MDF, believe it or not. So Jay and I talked about a month ago, and we just talked about the state of the channel and marketing and how it fits in. And one of the things that he was stressing was the importance of MDF, what's happening in that kind of component, and how it fits in overall. And so I kind of took that information. I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I need to go out and research and talk to every vendor that will listen to me and ask them about their program, and then see how all of these fit together and if they fit together. So thank you for that, Jay, first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. I get to look at about 10,000 different vendors and I get paid to do that. So I could tell you the story 10,000 different times over.
Right. And so, and that's kind of what I want you to do in 10 minutes. So, what is, first and foremost, like, let's start and say, like, what is the state of MDF currently in the channel as it relates to, a managed service provider standpoint?
Yeah, so I look at multiple angles and I used to run channels for big companies like IBM and Lenovo. I ran channels for a smaller company like Autotask. The fact is there's always a yield, and how much money you set aside for market development funds, more than half of it is never collected. It just sits out there and you just build it into your budgeting process that it's just never going to be taken. The second thing is I look at the technology. There's a through channel marketing automation category that's almost $500 million and 40 plus companies that participate. And I get to do bake-offs between them all and look at the feature function of how to spend that MDF through email campaigns or social search or syndicated content. So I get to look at the technology and the program and the process elements of it. But the most interesting part is the people element, the actual adoption of it and the actual people that are leveraging it to their benefit is really an interesting conversation.
And so, that is kind of what I'm trying to address here is with these conversations. And so I've maybe talked to between 20 and 25 vendors so far. Not all of them have been like produced episodes so far, but really just to survey and see what the information is that's out there. And so what I've noticed is that there is, like you said, this large depository of funds that just never reaches the MSPs. And so why do you think that is?
Well, there's a number of reasons. The industry, if you look back 39 years, the definition of marketing in days gone by were to build out a white paper with all of the vendors' sales pitch on it, and then put your logo on it and call that co-marketing. And that's not co-marketing at all. That's the vendor trying to use your mail list to get their white paper to market. So what's happening better now with technology is you've got, in the marketing world, you've got tools like Marketo and Eloqua and HubSpot and Pardot and things like that. That technology is now flowing into what you have available inside your MDF. So if you're looking to do digital marketing, for example, get on page one of Google and go and do some specific, search or social ads. Go do some specific targeted campaigns. It could be physical campaigns. If it makes sense to buy up a billboard on your interstate, running into town, there are now flexibility where it's digital or physical marketing, and it's not their sales pitch with your logo on it. It's your sales pitch or your marketing pitch with maybe their logo on the bottom right, but in many cases, not their logo. If you're successful in your marketing, by extension, they're going to be successful. And this is the point of where you should be diving in. If it's a co-branded asset, walk away, run away. If it's the ability for you to use other people's money to market in your own location and to use these distributed marketing tools to your advantage, it's free money, and you should run towards the vendors that are offering up that type of offer.
And the feedback that I've been getting from vendors is kind of that. It's, number one is I feel like a lot of them have said that, we don't need co-branding. As a matter of fact, sometimes we prefer not to have co-branding. And on the other side, they're just kind of sitting back and waiting to be pitched. It's like, we want the MSP to come to me with a good idea, and then we'll say yes or no, And so I think the problem in those cases is that the MSPs don't have the confidence or the wherewithal to even have that conversation with them. Um,
Yeah.
and so the other thing that I've noticed is like the growth of distributors, right? And so it seems like now the feedback that I've been getting in as far as that category is there's a distributor sitting between me and my MSP, end customers, and so it's harder for me to access them to have these conversations. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, the other thing we didn't learn for decades in MDF was the services element to it. And here's the stats. 66% of MSPs around the world, the 50,000 MSPs around the world, sit in the category of do it for me or do it on behalf of me. And it could be anything from not having the time, not having the money, not having the skills, not having the resources, not having the belief in marketing, because most of our business was always word of mouth. And, we built our businesses, maybe not using traditional marketing techniques. Well, when 2/3 of your entire audience need services, which is like an agency level services, this is where distributors came in. At Tech Data, for example, before they were taken private, 80% of their profit that they put to the bottom line, they're a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company, $40 billion company. 80% of the profit that they put to the bottom line came from TV agency. The $1 million check that I wrote them every quarter to put my logo on a page as Lenovo, for example, dropped to their bottom line. Their entire distribution business was break even. And the only money they were making was on services to help Lenovo with MSPs, go to market better and play that digital agency role. Somebody who can write content, somebody who could post up ads, somebody that could go print that billboard and things like that. So now that we know this, and this is another way to look at your vendors, is those that are investing in services is also to your benefit. If you could probably never want to work with an agency or never afford an agency charging you millions of dollars for, Super Bowl ads. But if there's a big vendor that's actually footing that bill and you get access to people that could write content for you, especially at your specific customers that you're targeting, if you've got people that could actually put together the creative, that putting together, Super Bowl style and quality of advertising and marketing, and you get that at your disposal and you can buy that through MDF funds, you should be all over that. Talking about, your website looking beautiful, all of your social media looking beautiful, and then getting radio ads, getting billboards, getting digital marketing up to the level of, punching way above your weight. You should be interrogating your vendors that you work with on what they have available for you and going to, get every dollar allocated.
That's right. And it's not just about reimbursement. There's also a lot of these enablement programs like you're describing that where it's like, hey, yeah, we've already, kind of vetted these solutions and all you have to do is kind of say when, and we'll start kicking these things into gear for you. But again, I think it's a matter of that information making its way to the MSP being confident enough to say, okay, yeah, let's do it. And then actually executing and following through. And so when we talked last, you did mention the self-service side of MDF. And, do you see that growing, or do you think that, kind of describe where that is now and where it will be?
Yeah, the biggest challenge in all of this is the average MSP has 8 employees, and most of them are technicians. There's not a VP of marketing at most MSPs. The owner principal is there trying to figure out billable hours, and for every day, week, month they spend thinking about marketing and tracking down their vendors and having these conversations is a day, week, month, out of earning, money and things like that. So it's not one of those things that any of us have the time to go and just step away and, spend a bunch of time, tracking people down. The second thing on self-service is 1/3 of the market truly is, getting into these platforms, building out their own campaigns, launching, email and social and search and syndicated content, and having all those levers and dials themselves. And that's hugely powerful. And again, you're using other people's money. So if you've got that ability, or you've got somebody that who's really good in marketing and maybe Marketo or HubSpot certified, you could partner up with them and look at leads and what a lead is worth to you, and look at what that, is worth to cost to acquire a customer and stuff, there could be an interesting little partnership that you do locally with people that know how to do marketing and then can do it on your behalf. And then you could pay them almost a commission rate on success. If that lead turns into a sales qualified lead, and then you end up earning, a $30,000 piece of recurring revenue, would I pay out a 10% kicker to the person who built that campaign? Probably.
Yeah. And so my next question is events, right? So in-person events in the channel will start to happen again at some point. It was seemed like when I have these conversations with vendors recently, that was sort of their thing. They were saying like, okay, a lot of this money is going to shift into MDF because the events obviously are dried up, or we can't, we're just not spending as much money on it now. So let's say that's going to change. Do you think that that's going to have an impact on MDF again in the opposite way?
Yeah, I think there's something interesting. There's a bunch of interesting things happening. After Labor Day, I think everyone is looking forward to booking their first plane tickets and getting back to human connection again. The events are going to be different. They're going to be hybrid events where you're going to spend less time locked in a room, more time in the hallways, and more time in the hotel lobby bar, reconnecting socially with people again. And we've learned in the last year how important that is. That being said, from a vendor investment perspective, there's 150 events per year for MSPs around the world. And this idea of having an event every 2 days and things like that, I think there's obviously consolidation that's going to happen. And there's events that you probably didn't have to fly somewhere for, that you could have picked up on Zoom and other VR, AR, MR means in the future. So we're going to be very much, more specific on where we're going, why we're going, and double clicking on the social element, I think, to build relationships that help our business. That being said, in terms of the way the vendors are spending, bigger than this change of events, what's happening is what I call the peanut butter spread. They're understanding in this world of influence, where they're losing a lot of their marketing technology stack. Last week with Google and Apple getting on board to allow customers to be anonymous forever, means that they're going to invest more in you because you influence that buyer. There's going to be more MDF coming your way earlier in the journey that isn't linked to your selling. There's going to be more as the big vendors, Dell, Cisco, IBM, HPE, all the big vendors are going 100% subscription model. The first transaction doesn't matter to them because it's the first 30 days. And managed service providers know this, a recurring model.
Yeah.
After the first 30 days with the customer, you need to drive adoption. There's going to be MDF there for adoption. You need to drive stickiness and integrations. That's going to come to you after the point of transaction. And then upsell, cross-sell over every 30 days forever. So understand that MDF is going to be broken into 3. You can pick it up early influence, at the point of transaction, and then every 30 days forever. And I think they're going to enrich your ability to make marketing dollars and co-innovate, value creation, network effects. There's a lot more money coming if you understand the ecosystem view of MDF versus the channel view of MDF.
And that's an interesting point, because now we're not talking about necessarily go out and getting net new clients. You're talking about basically increasing the lifetime value of the customer for your vendors. That's a whole different situation. And now you can bring in funds that maybe you use to really better your customer satisfaction. And there's all these different things now that you can do that aren't necessarily, that are, I guess should say, are more in the comfort zone of an MSP. Whereas sales and marketing might exist slightly outside that comfort zone.
Yeah, so here's a mental exercise that you can do based on that question. So last week, IBM came to an epiphany, and they're kind of sliding, right? For 8 straight years, they've been kind of sliding downwards into obscurity. But at the same time, for 28 straight years, they've won the patent battle. If you look at the IP around AI and automation and blockchain and quantum computing and drones and self-driving cars, they own a lot of the IP of the future. They just haven't been able to monetize it. And so last week, they announced $1 billion with a B that's going to fund their ecosystem. And if you think that they're just going to juice up the MDF funds for transactional style partners, that's not what they're doing. They're looking to spend $1 billion on value creation, on co-innovation, leveraging network effects, creating whole platforms of innovation, working with you to go and build out last mile, creative innovation, at customers. And, with $1 billion, that is an incredible amount, and it'll break through MDF. It'll go into other buckets, but the opportunity to think of, and you may not be partnered with IBM today, but you can understand that every vendor that you are partnered with today are starting to think about their own ecosystem investments, and they're going to have a lot of zeros attached to them. And just understand where those zeros are going to be spread like peanut butter is where you got to be thinking about in your own location, going to get more than your fair share of those dollars.
And so like my last question, I know that vendor competition is really like heating up. You're seeing a large amount of like smaller vendors enter. And now I'm wondering, does MDF become kind of like a card that is played in this process of like these smaller vendors trying to get more market share with MSPs? If they can come to the table with like more, essentially the kickback in the form of like marketing support, whereas some of the larger vendors may not, like how do you see that? Do you think that will ever happen? Is it realistic?
Yeah, I think that, well, today we're tracking 10,000 vendors, which is a lot. There's 2,000 vendors in security alone that are knocking on your door trying to win your business. Behind that, there's 17,000 SaaS companies that are building their first channels that will be knocking on your door shortly. There are 10,000 emerging tech companies like IoT and AI that are going to be knocking on your door shortly. They're all going to check the box for MDF. And it's all going to be painful. It's all going to go through their own process, and you got to go through the portal and whatever processes they've created. It's almost become table stakes that everybody's going to kind of have it. It's going to be more interesting for the vendors that are participating in your communities, that are looking to have that conversation to say, what is 1 + 1 = 3? I don't want to just run an email campaign here. I understand that you call on mid-sized clinics in upstate New York in front of marketing style buyers. How do we go and build a product together? How do we go build a set of services together? How do we go invent something new using all these emerging technologies and using all these no-code, low-code environments and things? And how do we manage it? And how do we set up the infrastructure? And, how do we think differently about the future? And then, the MDF is going to come almost irrelevant to you at that point. There's going to be all kinds of investments for working together and collaborating together with your vendors. Those are the ones to watch.
All right. And so last but not least, I think like just give the MSPs out there a little bit of a wake up call and some motivation to like go out there and claim MDF right now.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would be doing is, as an MSP, is looking at where the money's going from customers. We get to survey 690,000 customers a year. The triple-digit growth right now is in automation. The double-digit growth you're seeing, Azure and AWS and Google all grow in the 50s. Year on year, quarter on quarter, inside a pandemic. You're seeing a big move to remote topology, security, compliance, governance, all the different elements that go into this new future of work, which is right in our wheelhouse. And then you're seeing huge investments in customer experience, curbside service, regardless of their industry. So you got to be narrowed in on where the opportunities are, because in all the double and triple digit growth I just mentioned, managed services dropped 1.9%. I think it's going to get back to growing by double digits again, taking care of this remote topology. But start thinking about the 50 and 100% growth areas and where you can go and earn a multiplier on top of that and go spend the MDF dollars in the most efficient way. And then figure out a way with the vendors you already work with to go and get and track how much of it you're using, because you're part of their yield numbers. And if you're not getting your fair share, you're just, giving away money at that point. And again, there's probably a little partnership you can make in your local community, performance-based. So unless you win, they don't win, that people will be happy to help you, go and leverage this money and really, hit a home run locally.
All right, Jay, appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me.